So back in the early 2000s, Russia did something huge, something really ambitious. It decided to join this massive, unified European system for higher education. The goal? To line up its own historic universities with the ones in the West. Let's get into this because it's a fascinating story of reform, big dreams, and, well, some very unexpected outcomes. And that right there is the big question, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about Russia, a country with this legendary Soviet-era reputation in science and math. They were hard to be a lightweight. So for them to decide to join a club basically designed by their old Cold War rivals, well, that move raises some serious questions about what it really takes to change a massive system from the inside. So to get this, we got to start in Europe. By the time the 90s were wrapping up, European leaders were kind of looking across the Atlantic and feeling, let's say, a little behind. You see, the United States was this total magnet for international students and talent. Its university system was pretty much the global gold standard. So Europe's response was something called the Bologna Process. The whole plan was to create one single European higher education area, to make their own universities more connected, more competitive, and, frankly, more appealing to the rest of the world. And the core idea behind it was, brilliantly simple. Just standardize the whole system into 3 cycles that everybody everywhere could understand. You do your bachelor's degree, then maybe a master's, and then a doctorate. Simple. It meant a degree from a university in Portugal would be totally comparable to one from Finland. That way, students and professionals could move around the continent with no problem. Okay, so where does Russia fit into all of this? Well, for Moscow, joining this club wasn't just about credits and diplomas. No, this was a massive political move. Remember, this is the post-Soviet era. Russia was busy trying to figure out its new place on the world stage, and President Putin saw the Bologna process as this golden opportunity to build deeper connections with Europe, connections that went way beyond just trade deals. It was a way to show the world that Russia was a modern, cooperative European partner. And boy, did they move fast. The first declaration was signed in 1999. Just 4 years later, Russia was officially in. By 2010, they were a full-fledged member. On paper, it looked like a total success story. But here is where the official story and the reality for actual students and professors just completely split apart. This is where things get really, really interesting. Okay, so this created a massive problem right away. For decades, the standard Russian degree was the 5-year specialist. Everybody knew what it was, employers trusted it, they knew it produced graduates who were ready to work. But this new 4-year bachelor's degree, the baccalaureate, it just felt incomplete, like a step down. And it wasn't just a feeling. The country's entire job market was basically rejecting it. Companies just felt that 4 years wasn't enough time to give students the skills they needed. This put anyone with the new baccalaureate degree at a serious disadvantage. But underneath all that skepticism, there were honestly much bigger problems. These new reforms did absolutely nothing to fix a deep-rooted culture of corruption. Just listen to what one student leader said. For about 3,000 rubles, maybe $100 back then, you could just buy a passing grade. This wasn't a system based on what you knew, but who you could pay. And if you think that's bad, get ready for this next story. It's just incredible. A student literally downloads a paper from the internet, a paper that isn't even in Russian, it's in Ukrainian, and hands it in. And what happens? The professor just hands it back with a little note basically saying, hey, good job, but next time try to find one in Russian. This points to a culture of what they called automatic passing, where the standards were so low, it was almost impossible to actually fail. So the degree itself was a mess. But what about the other big promise of the Bologna process? Mobility. The idea that students and teachers could move freely across Europe. Well, on that front, Russia's experiment also hit a giant brick wall. I mean, the data is just crystal clear. While students were hopping between, say, France and Germany, no problem. The flow of students in and out of Russia, it was barely a trickle. The academic superhighway that Bologna was supposed to build had this massive roadblock sitting right at the Russian border. So you have to ask, why? Why weren't people coming to Russia to study? Well, the reasons were pretty straightforward. Foreign students ran into a mountain of paperwork, confusing visas, weird and unpleasant medical exams, and you combine that with a huge language barrier, not so great dorms, and very little financial aid, and suddenly Russia just doesn't look like a very attractive option. And you can really feel that frustration in stories from the students who did try. Instead of a warm welcome, they describe being met with this confusing, kind of intimidating bureaucracy that didn't explain anything. It was the total opposite of the open, friendly system Bologna was supposed to be all about. But maybe the most damning comment of all came from a professor, someone inside the system. When he was asked why a student from France should come study in Russia instead of their home country, his answer was, "I have no answer." Wow. If even the professors don't see the value, that tells you everything you need to know. All right, so let's pull back. After a whole decade of these reforms, a decade of being integrated on paper, what was the final verdict on Russia's big experiment? Well, it all boils down to this key concept that researchers call nominal adoption. It means you adopt the new system in name only. Russia adopted the brand of Bologna. It changed the names of its degrees, it changed the structure of its academic years, but it never changed the substance. The deep systemic problems, the corruption, the low standards, the bureaucracy, they were all still there. And that's really the heart of it. It was like slapping a fancy new European label on a very old bottle. The stuff inside, the actual quality and experience of the education, it was still fundamentally the same, shaped far more by its old Soviet legacy than its new European ambitions. And that leaves us with this huge, lingering question that goes way beyond just Russia or education. Can you really, truly change a complex, deep-rooted national system just by signing an international piece of paper? Russia's experience seems to suggest that real change takes a lot more than just a signature on a declaration.